All right. Hello and welcome to this video, this Sunday astrology lecture. And today we're going to cover the sun in astrology and what the sun represents. I'm going to kind of cover that just to give you some insight into, what the core of astrology is really all about. It all does rest with the sun being the center of our system here, the solar system. And so being the center of our entire system, the sun also relates to the center of you. Um, Astrologers even they say that the sun literally represents the sense of I am, and it shows where your I am comes from. Your I am being your identity, how you identify, and really just the source of your consciousness, the realization that you exist, that I am. And so the sun is, the thing that holds everything all together in your being. It holds everything together here in the solar system, and so it's the thing that holds everything together for you and for who you are as a personality in this life. So, hey, welcome, Inel. So, um, I'm just talking to the camera right now since we don't have any people joining yet, but let me go like this. So, um, so basically, um, the sun in astrology is that core component that holds all things together. In the birth chart, it's the centerpiece of the entire chart. It's the thing around which we need to understand all the other planets revolve. So you could think of it as the instinct of all instincts. It's the instinct to be and to, I guess you could say, become, but it's really just the instinct to be. And it's the need within all of us to simply be. So that's typically what, human beings try to create for themselves. They just want to be. And sometimes what does that for them is alcohol or drugs that just allows them to come out of their head, out of their thoughts, and to simply be. And that's typically what human beings do when we try to make ourselves be at peace rather than find the peace which exists at the core of our being through surrender to God, essentially. So God within you is the sun. The sun literally represents you as a God, and it's God within you. It's the flame inside of your heart. The Hindus actually apparently believe that there's a flame in your heart. And that's an amazing visualization if you'll meditate on that, if you'll visualize that. It's a visualization I really enjoy, um, because what we're taught, in occult literature and esoteric writings is that, the heart is the center point, it's the energetic center of the body. Um, and the breath, you know, there's apparently nerves in the diaphragm that pull the breath in. And then there's nerves in the throat center that help to push the air out, that regulate the outflow of air. And in the center of those nerves is the heart. So breathing is literally what can stoke the flame in the heart, the spiritual flame. And it's through the breath that we can connect to the divine. And why? Basically, because the breath tethers you to this present moment. And when you are in the present moment, you are in your sun sign. You're embodying your sun and what the sun represents. And so that goes with all different planets. When you're taking action, you're embodying your Mars. When you are receiving somebody and creating space for them and harmonizing with them, you're embodying your Venus. But the sun is the main element in our being that we want to embody fully because it represents who you truly are. And so when we look to the chart, we look at the aspects to the sun, we look at what's going on with the sun, we look at what house it's placed in, what degree of the sign that it's in, and where's the moon relative to the sun, because the sun represents your reflective consciousness, your personal consciousness, your identity with your personal self. And so it shows, the moon gives way to how you express humanity and what you truly care about and the things that you take personally. But the sun shows who you are as an individual, your individualized self, what makes you unique, original in this life, and what is your unique being. So as I said, this relates to your being. And the way in which you be in this life is not something that can be taken away or imitated or counterfeited or anything like that. It's totally unique to you. And what we need in this world, as far as I can see, is people who can embody their spiritual being, which is just being here now and not placing any mental interpretations over that. So not having a dialogue about what's going on in your mind in this present, but being in the present and experiencing it firsthand. So as children, that comes pretty naturally. We all have that as when we're a child. It's the spiritual trauma that pulls us away from the present moment, because we at some time or another learn that in the moment we can experience pain. And then that pain is painful. So we want to escape the pain. And that pulls us out of the present moment, which of course just creates more pain. So it's a pretty crazy cycle. But the sun in astrology is your heart, essentially. It's your heart. The moon corresponds more to the brain and the reflective mind, but the sun shows your unique being, and also your unique power of love, the way in which you can best give love in this life. So so I hope everybody's doing well. Let me know in the chat how you're doing. Let me know what's going on. Let me know if there's anything you want to talk to me about today. I would love to help out if anybody needs help with anything. I'm here to serve, and these Sunday meetings are meant to be a type of fellowship to help uplift people, get them on their best foot forward in terms of starting, the week on Monday, so you can have an amazing week ahead. And Sundays are days to recharge. Sunday is the day ruled by the sun, and it's a good day to recharge, which is what, sunlight does. It, through the energetic sympathy that you have with the sun from your heart, it can re-energize you just being in the sun. So the sun is the original food for the human being. And the sun plays the most important role in astrology out of all other planets, because without the sun, we wouldn't have light. We wouldn't have any manifestation. There'd be nothing to see. There'd be no astrology. So the sun really is the main character in astrology. And it's the path of the sun that the sun makes throughout the year, from spring, summer, fall, winter, and again to spring. It's this path and this pattern of the sun that sets the whole stage for the entire cosmic drama. And it really reveals the drama or the story of each of our individual lives. And even though we have our own journey, our own path, we still follow the shape of the path that the sun makes through birth, life, and then death, and then rebirth. And so the sun is at the core of it all. The sun is the main source of life, light, and consciousness, literally. But also, in astrology, it relates to the source of the psyche, you could say. So it's an incredible part of the birth chart to really want to tap into, even though it's so, I guess, over accentuated with sun sign, horoscopes and things like that. The sun still, it can't be overrated. It really can't be overemphasized because of how important it is. But we need to understand the spiritual importance. And so if I could just share with you a little bit about this presentation here. Let's see. Just to give you a look, this is from a presentation that I did in my astrology course. So here's where we learn about all the different planets. But, I just want to read a little bit of this for you before I get to the book that I'm going to read. Just want to show you some of the significance of the sun that you may not know. All right. So the sun is the central symbol of the self in the birth chart. And that's why we say, I am an Aries, if the sun was in Aries when you were born. I am a Leo. The sun literally represents the consciousness of I am. And it's that quality of consciousness of I am, of knowing that you're a self, that comes from the sun center within you. So when you tap into your sun, that's where you're tapping into divinity. You're tapping into God within you, which is the source of all love, wisdom, and power. And so we can't take credit for our love, wisdom, and power. It's not ours to have. Nobody can own wisdom, for example. Wisdom is just something that is tapped into. Nobody owns any wisdom. I don't have wisdom. Um, Wisdom is something that I allow to happen through me when I tap into its source, which is God within me. It's not me as an ego. So the sun is that transcendent core, which when you tap into it, you take no credit for all the good things that happen in life. You see that they are all coming from this central source, and that source exists within everyone equally. The thing that's not equal is the degree to which we all tap into it. We all tap into it at different degrees. And to the degree that we tap into it, the less we suffer in life, because the more we're willing to suffer, because we don't suffer in the same way. We don't experience it as something happening to us. It's just an amazing experience of life, no matter what it is, no matter what we're experiencing, as long as it's from that presence and that awareness. And you can bring full awareness into any activity and it starts to take the pain away, really. It's very interesting. So the symbol is the circle with a point in the center. That's the symbol of the sun. And this symbolizes the one unity underlying all things. So that spiritual source that is in all human beings. And the light of the sun in which we live, move, and have our being is the lifeblood of our whole system. Just as our heart pulsates vitality to every part of the body, so does the sun pulsate life and light to all bodies in our solar system. So, as I said, the sun's position in the birth chart shows the nature of the lessons that the life will revolve around, or that will revolve around life, the circumstances which will orbit the life center or self, right? So the house shows the physical conditions and the concrete lessons, as well as the area of life in which you can most easily exert energy for self-discovery. So my son's in the 6th house in Leo. So as long as I creatively express myself in a routine and way of service, so I'm a Leo, so I need to be creative, but it's in the 6th house. So my life does revolve around how much service am I putting out? What kind of quality is my service and how am I serving? It's very important to me that I serve. And the sun being in my 6th house shows that. So the sign, though, shows the type of energy which the individual radiates and can realize. And the aspects between other planets to the sun show the relationship of the individual's life force to the rest of the individual's characteristics, as well as to the attitudinal position one holds to the persons, places, or things of the outer life. In other words, the aspects to your sun show, like, for example, if you have a square to Venus, it shows that core center of your heart, the spiritual center of your being, might not jive so well with your instinct to socialize or to harmonize with other people. It just shows that there's kind of a conflict of interest there. For example, let's say your sun's in Aries and your Venus is in Cancer. Well, that watery part of you, that Cancerian love and that need to merge with people intimately, kind of butts heads with your identity as an Aries, which shows that you have this vitality in this life and this independence. So how does independence make room for your need for intimacy and close-knit connections, because those are naturally kind of, conflict. You want to be independent and make your own path, but at the same time, you have a need for closeness, for bringing people in. And so that's just one example. So, in the chart, it's very important to look at the aspects of the sun, basically. And without the sun, there'd be nothing to see, no world, no life, no astrology. Therefore, there is so much in astrological interpretation which rests upon the sun and its influence, and if not, the entire art itself. So every ray of the sun is a living energy, and the whole is the life force or vitality of every human being that draws breath. All right. So the sun is pretty dang important. It's the giver of life. It's the creator, literally. So the sun is literally the physical representation of God in life, in physical life. And the sun is a reflection of an invisible sun, of a spiritual sun. And that spiritual sun is at the center of all, and it has no circumference. That's how it's written about in mystical literature, that the true spiritual center or sun is at the center of all life everywhere, and it has no circumference. Kind of familiar sounding, huh? Kind of sounds like it's omnipotent, omniscient. Kind of sounds like God. So so here's some cool things about the sun: the urge, the need, the health, symbols, expression, psychology, and that's all in my course. So we cover that in depth in my course. If you would like to enroll in the course, let me know. There's 12 pre-recorded lecture videos to go through, several lessons. There's several assignments. So there's actual homework for you to do. Do it at your own pace, but the homework brings you into your birth chart, and it allows you to get a look at your chart, and you fill it in, and there's journal spaces for you to do some self-reflection. It's all about you in my course, because the more you get to know yourself and read your birth chart, your astrological birth chart, the more you understand astrology. You got to understand yourself. Astrology is just a map to bring you back into yourself, but the map is not the territory. You've got to go in, locate your Venus inside of you, locate your Mercury inside of you, and get to know these different parts of yourself. Because when you analyze, when you dissect, when you pull these pieces apart and you look at them separately, then you gain insight when you put it all back together again. It's so amazing. And that's why astrology is so helpful. It breaks down all the different instincts, all the different energies in your psyche, and allows you to look at them separately, so that when you put it back together again, you go, oh, this is me. This is the whole me. So pretty cool, pretty cool. No beginning, no end. That's right, I know. Amazing. Thanks, Arbana, for being here. Awesome. So you can get a greater look at this by joining my course. Here's some sun sign symbolism, just more amazing information on the sun that I put together. There's a trinity of manifestation from the sun: life, heat, and life, light, and heat. So there's consciousness that comes from the sun, life. There's light, obviously, and then there's heat, which is also magnetism. And this trinity of manifestation corresponds to power, wisdom, and love. If you look at it, if you meditate on it, if you really get deep with it, you can confirm this. Every living being has a sun center within, which is its own consciousness as I am. And that's what makes us divine, when we can realize that I am, that you exist. You're the only animal on earth that can do this in that kind of way. Arbana says, you are an amazing astrologer. I really recommend the course. Thank you so much. So the sun is the ultimate symbol for the conscious self in human beings. And as we know, human beings are conscious in degrees, in varying degrees. Some are less conscious than others. And the degree to which you are conscious of the self, to that degree, you cannot do evil, because it's too painful. Evil really hurts yourself the most. And this is why we need to not judge, because whoever is doing evil is getting what they deserve in life. They are suffering and they need help, obviously, but we can't help them by condemning them, right? And that's not for us to do. That's what God is for. And God delivers perfect justice all the time, everywhere. It's something so logical to put your faith in. It just is so logical, because then you don't have to take care of it. You don't have to worry about that. There is divine justice in this universe, but the appearance of things can give you a different story. But you got to realize that's called appearance. How it appears is not always how it is. Everybody's doing the best they can. This is a spiritual battle that we live in, a battle between good and evil. And I can go on about this forever, so let me just wrap this up. Sun is the ultimate symbol for the conscious self in human beings. In the chart, the sun shows who we most essentially are, and therefore how we respond to life, in contrast to the moon, which would be how we react to life. So it's a spiritual battle, and people can't help themselves. You can't overcome a spirit in this physical body by yourself. That's what God is for. And God is the regulating principle. He's the master of this universe. And he regulates everything so that you don't have to. Think about it. There's so many angels that watch over all the processes that keep you alive, your digestion, your heartbeat, your breath. You don't have to consciously do any of these things. Just imagine if you did. Imagine if it all rested on you. Wouldn't that be so amazingly horrible? You wouldn't be able to live because you'd have to be concentrating on, okay, I'm keeping my heartbeat going. Okay, I'm making sure I'm breathing in and out. But luckily, you're watched over. So these things get to happen automatically. And you know what else happens automatically, folks? God will defeat evil for you, within you and outside of you. The only thing that needs to happen is your ego needs to sheath the sword. You need to get out of the way and stop trying to be the hero. The hero lives within you and will fight the battle for you. It's so incredible. And I'm sorry, human beings, your glory gets taken away when as soon as we realize that. But hey, too bad. All the glory goes to God. I know you want to be the hero. I know you want the glory for yourself, but that's the nature of the darkness inside of you. And it's the nature of greed, and it's the nature of evil. Evil wants to do it itself, for itself, by itself, and it's isolated, it's alone, and it's suffering. That is what suffering is. So as soon as you just drop your sword and let God fight the battle for you and surrender, God wants your heart. Salvation is of the heart, as it says in scripture. That means you got to surrender the totality of what you think you are. Just give it all up so that this higher force can do it for you, and you won't suffer in life, and you won't have anything else. You won't have anything left to complain about. You'll have an amazing life. And I think that's what people are afraid of. They're afraid of losing the things that they get to complain about and the things that they get to blame and those crutches in life. And they don't want to give it up. As much as they complain about it, they don't want to get rid of it. It's mind-blowing. It's totally crazy when you see this. But if that's how people want to live, then let them suffer. We got to let people suffer because we can't take something away from them that they don't want to give up. So I urge you, the individual, to give it up, because that's the one thing you can choose in this life. You can choose to let it go, or you can choose to hang on, but you can't make anything happen. That's the only thing you can choose, is to surrender or not. And as soon as you surrender, God takes over for you. But the work isn't done. You got to repent. And I know that's a weird religious-y word, but repent, it just means to turn away from what you used to be about. And the way that you effectively do that, it's a spiritual process. And the way that you can initiate that process is by forgiveness. So you got to go to those who you've hated in the past and apologize for hating them. Because if there's one thing we can't do in life, it's to hate. And the sun center within you, what the sun sign represents, is that perfect love that exists within you. So all we can do is surrender, right? So as soon as you surrender hate, love comes in. That's how it works. All you got to do is let go of the hate and repent by apologizing for hating. I'm sorry for hating you. I forgive you. You did this and this, and it made me hate you, but I'm sorry for hating you. You couldn't help it. I forgive you. And then you set them free, but you set yourself free in that way. And then perfect love pours in. You stop playing God, because if you're judging other people, you're playing God. And God can't live inside of the reality of God can't occur until you stop playing God. And we started playing God when we became angry with life, when we started judging things and people and circumstances and situations and experiences. Before we started judging it, we just lived it as children. We had innocence, we had trust, we had life. And now we're of death because we're judging everything we go through as good or bad. And it's the knowledge of good and evil that caused us to fall from the Garden of Eden. It's all just a story about us, This is the story of our lives. As human beings, we don't have the right to hate another human being. How is an imperfect person going to judge another imperfect person? It doesn't make sense. And that's why people are suffering. They're judging their fellow human beings. Just let it go. Just stop. Just let it go. Go forgive, and life will be incredible. It'll all happen for you. But so that's the practical side of trust and faith. And as soon as you realize that trust and faith, you come into your sun. You come into your sun sign center. You come back to who you truly are, which is pure love. That's really who you truly are. The false self, the fulcrum of the false self, what the false self operates from is hate and judgment and anger, because it's all the same. It's all one. But your true self operates from perfect love, because we get our identity from God, from the thing that created us. We didn't create ourselves. I didn't create this body. I didn't create my spirit. It was already here, and it's been here. And as Zainel said, there's no beginning and no end to it. And that's the thing that I can't fathom. And so I give all the glory to my creator for that. And that helps me in life. That helps me avoid, the pitfalls of the ego, of thinking that I'm doing it, because then you have thoughts that build you up, and then you have thoughts that tear you down. And the only reason they build you up is so they can tear you down later. It's all a setup. So we got to come out of the moon, or overcome the moon, by returning to the source, the sun within us, which is pure love. And then you'll naturally reflect life, light, and joy to all beings all of the time. You'll treat all people and all people the same. You'll treat them all the same, because nobody will be greater than you. Nobody will be lesser than you. You can see that the sun exists within all people. The source is in all of us. So it's a divine reality, and astrology shows it very clearly through our sun signs. And we just all have our own unique flavorings. Even though there's only 12 archetypes that people can exist in, there's 30 degrees to each 12, and there's all different aspects being made to all the different degrees in every kind of birth chart. So everybody's unique, even though there's only 12 archetypes. It's such an incredible, amazing system. And it's so mind-blowing how God created infinity in diversity. Like you would think that in physical diversity, there would eventually be a copy, but there's no exact copies in this universe. None. Not anywhere. Even all tigers have unique stripe patterns. Every single tiger. There's no two tigers alike. And I think that goes for all creatures. There's no exact copies anywhere in this universe. How do you do that? How can you create that? That's unfathomable. And yet God did it. So why not trust him with the rest of your life? I don't know. Just saying. So I'm going to get into the reading that we have today, and then we're going to try and end by 1 p.m. So this will be a little 1-hour video. So does anybody here have any questions or anything you'd like to ask me, or anything you want to share, or anything you're struggling with right now, any problems you're going through in life that you would like some prayer about or some insight about? Anything you'd like to ask me at all, feel free. If not, we'll get to the reading. Okay, I'm going to pull this up right here. This is The Art of Synthesis. We're going to continue on in this book that we've been reading together. I'll exit out of this. And we're on chapter 4. And this chapter is about the sun. Chapter 4, the sun, life giver. So, checking the chat here, like snowflakes. Exactly. All right. Chapter 4, the sun, life giver, from The Art of Synthesis by Alan Leo. This is an amazing chapter, and you're going to learn some new things about the sun Um, Alan Leo knows how to blow your mind, so I'm pretty sure he's going to do that today. All right. At the center of our solar system is the sun, the giver of life and light to the whole system. It is the principal influence throughout the whole science of astrology, and is, until a certain stage is reached in evolution, the representative of that self. Its symbol is the circle with a point in the center, symbolizing the one unity underlying all things. This point in the circle is the beginning of all that is to be, the unmanifested, absolute, primordial, permanent center, the unspoken word from which all is to emanate. From the Eastern philosophy known as the wisdom religion, we have been taught to look upon the sun as the physical body, or rather the outward glory of the central intelligence in the solar system. The sun, however, is only the reflection of the central or universal sun, although to us on earth it represents the highest we can hope to know or to understand while inhabiting human bodies. Every sun in the heavens is but a reflection of a divine glory which we can obtain no adequate conception, for no man can look upon the real sun and live. If you think about that, I just got to interject. What does that symbolize? The fact that, the sun allows you to see everything, but you cannot see the sun without burning your eyes eventually. You can't look directly at it. What do you think that represents spiritually, in spiritual reality? Why do you think that is in this physical reality? What does that mean? I'm just going to leave that there. From the central sun, which itself is triple, arises 7 beings or holy ones who send forth their rays or forces into 7 solar systems. And our sun represents one of these rays. In the New Testament, we read that Jesus said, "I and my Father are one, and I ascend unto my Father and your Father," showing that he in the same planetary realm. Showing that he and those who followed him belong to the same star or father in the same planetary realm. And this is the astrological explanation of the statement, "In my Father's house are many mansions." Our visible sun is therefore the shadow of the central sun, acting as a concrete symbol of the eternal point from which it emanates and around which it moves in a cycle of thousands of years. Whether the 7 great spirits or cosmocratores beyond our visible sun have a direct reflection in the 7 planets familiar to astrologies, we are unable to say definitely. But it is evident that, applying the maxim "as above, so below," the sun of our system is a star having streams of influence which seem to link it with each planet and give to each its special lordship over certain signs of the zodiac. For the sun has primal lordship over all the signs, and and then each planet is allotted its separate rulership under the sun. Exoterically, then, the physical sun is the center of our manifested solar system. Esoterically, it is the focus of a ray from the central sun or supreme intelligence, presiding over the whole of our universe. And from the sun, we receive as much of the central sun's rays as are manifested through this focus. Besides this central sun, the spiritual center and circumference of the whole universe, there is a polar sun connecting the central sun with the equatorial sun of our solar system. Esoterically, we have the spiritual sun and the pole star, symbolized as the tree and the serpent. The pole star is symbolically the home of the gods, around which revolve the 7 stars of the Great Bear, named after the immortal rishis who represent the 7 rays of the central sun. They stand for space and time, or time and eternity. Then at a lower stage, we have the sun as center of our solar system, and the spirit of the sun divided into 7 streams or spheres of influence through the 7 planets. For this reason, the sun is always depicted as drawn by 7 horses, or by 1 horse with 7 heads, meaning the 7 rays which spread through the solar system. These 7 rays, obviously, are the colors. They're represented by the colors. We got 7 colors, don't we? Modern science is still in the dark, and those colors come from the sun. Isn't that amazing? Modern science is still in the dark respecting many solar phenomena, but it is quite clear that life, light, heat, and magnetism are very closely connected with the sun. The astrologers of old believed in solar magnetism to such an extent that they attributed all the life force in nature to this influence, which they considered peculiar to our physical sun and quite different from that connected with any other star or planet. And in the same way, they spoke of lunar magnetism as being quite distinct from that of the sun. The Earth was represented as emitting a negative ray, which the solar life force or magnetism impregnated in a different manner each month according to the changed relationship of sun, moon, and earth to the zodiac. The solar magnetism is therefore the most potent factor in the consideration of what we may term planetary influence. For every ray of the sun is a living energy, and the whole is the life force of vitality of every human being that draws breath. The sun's position in relation to the moon and the earth at the moment of birth decides the quality of that ray and its strength or weakness. Astronomers tell us that there is a luminous envelope completely surrounding the sun, termed the photosphere, and from this all light and heat are radiated. Clairvoyants have gone further, telling us of the color influence continuously playing through this luminous ether. Clairvoyant meaning one who has spiritual sight, somebody who can see in the spiritual realms. They have an awakened third eye. It is these rays of light and consciousness sent forth from the sun that form the individualities of men and that make of them in very truth the sons of God, sons and daughters of God. For the sun represents the great sacrifice and sends forth individualities that will afterwards be drawn back in full self-consciousness to share the bliss, which is the essence of the divine nature. I'm sorry, I got to interject here. That's what Saturn helps to achieve as the last of the visible planets. Saturn represents the boundary from which then we can return. So Saturn perfects our self-consciousness so that as that divine little water droplet, once we return back to the ocean or back to the sun, once you're a divine spark, right? Like a water droplet from the ocean, then you return back to the ocean or the sun, and hopefully you return in self-consciousness so that you can continue to worship this great source from which you've come from, but now you have self-consciousness. You're still separate. And what an amazing paradise that'll be. So that's what the whole journey is about. So we leave the source so that we can return to the source with our individualities retained. That's the gift of God, which is a gift incomprehensible. We can't even comprehend how amazing that gift is. We just can't do it. And it's worth worshiping God for. I mean, it's incredible. So it is these rays of light and consciousness sent forth from the sun that form the individualities of men and women. It makes them in very truth the sons and daughters of God, for the sun represents the great sacrifice and sends forth individualities that will afterwards be drawn back in full self-consciousness to share that bliss, which is the essence of the divine nature. The sun then is a representative of our solar logos, whose sacrifice on a lower plane is a reflection of that on higher planes above. There is a trinity of manifestation from the solar logos, just as there is in the greater universe. And this, we are taught, takes the form of three emanations or great outpourings of consciousness: life, light, and heat, or magnetism. The first of these three is creative and energizing and proceeds from the third or lowest aspect of the solar logos. It may be said to create the material substance of the solar system. The second outpouring is integrative and upbuilding and may be termed the ensouling essence. It proceeds from the second aspect of the logos and gives life and form to substance. The third outpouring is the gift of that divine individual spark, which ensures the immortality of man, and this comes from the first and highest aspect of our logos. Amazing. Therefore, as taught in the secret doctrine, the sun we see is a reflection of the true sun. This reflection, as an outward concrete thing, is a kama rupa. All the suns forming the kama rupa of cosmos. To its own system, the sun is Buddhi, as being the reflection and vehicle of the true sun, which is Atma, invisible on this plane. All the phohatic forces, electricity, etc., are in this reflection. Again, we are told the effect of the sun on humanity is connected with kama prana, with the most physical kamic elements in us. It is the vital principle which helps growth. Astrologically, the sun is the life factor which animates everything its rays fall upon, giving that magnetic affinity which binds one thing to another. It also gives the instinctual consciousness, which is rationalized by an interblending with the planetary rays, ranging from the lowest to the highest degree of psychic development. The sun is the giver of the life principle, or the breath of life. And when manifesting in the physical world, the sun represents the specialized life or prana in each separated individual. In all degrees of manifestation, the sun is the giver of life, spiritually, mentally, and physically. And it is therefore of vital and primary importance in all study of astrology. It is the representative of the one life that permeates all things. And therefore, careful study of the sun and all that it denotes in the nativity is necessary before a sound judgment can be given. From a physical and mundane standpoint, the sun is the giver of light by day and the moon by night. It is the breath of life governing the inbreathing and the outbreathing. From the standpoint of the feelings, the sun governs the heart with its sensations and emotions and gives life to these feelings from the fiercest passion up to the purest love and friendship. From a mental standpoint, the sun is the heart and wisdom, the life of the intelligence, the self-conscious center on the plane of the mind. The importance of the sun's position and aspects can never be overestimated in judging a nativity, for without its rays, all would be dead and inert. So let me read that again. The importance of the sun's position and aspects can never be overestimated in judging a nativity, for without its rays, all would be dead and inert. We first observe the influence of the sun in the sign of the zodiac through which its rays are passing at birth. If instead of regarding the sun as though it were outside the zodiac, we were to think of it as the center, with its rays permeating the whole circle at once, we should have a clearer concept of the manner in which the signs are vitalized by it. Nevertheless, the earth by its revolution around the sun is so placed that at any given time, one particular sign appears to be, as it were, specialized, the sun's ray at that time being focused through that sign onto the earth. And we thus obtain some idea of the reason for that particular sign, vitalized by the sun, being taken as the individual coloring, as we have termed it. The beginning and the end of all manifested life is, in a special sense, governed by the sun. And according to its strength and power at birth, so will the life it rules be strong or weak. For it is the power, wisdom, and activity of all human expression. All that is below the sun is but a series of forms that are more or less transitory, the sun being the lord of life, and the moon the ruler of all forms. Each planet draws its life from the sun, and therefore no planet can be powerful in a nativity if entirely free from an aspect with the sun. Whereas each planet in aspect with the sun adds to the strength and power of the individuality. The sun vivifying the forms or the vehicles which that planet represents, and the planet collecting or focusing the solar rays. The most powerful aspect of all is that formed between the sun and moon, when life and form are conjoined. On either side of the sun, figuratively speaking, are Mars and Venus, and between these two planets, the sun's rays are always most active. For in them, the solar rays are used to conquer matter and the animal instincts that are always permeating matter until redeemed by the spirit. Mars is considered as the symbol of the counterfeit of the spirit, in which the life force is often abused through ignorance and inexperience. Thus, the solar rays may be said to be pouring through Mars as blind forces, in which the life is utilized for muscular or physical activity, Mars governing the whole of the muscular system in animal man. When this force is transmuted, it is attracted towards Venus, and from physical passion and activity, it is refined into and gradually manifests as pure love. Its original condition, though not then conscious of it, animal man not being self-conscious. Isn't that fascinating? This is represented by the angles occupied by the sun, and also whether above or below the earth. When in the east and below the horizon, spirit and life are subject to matter, and form casts its glamour over the soul, or moon. But when above the earth, life and spirit are dominating matter, and the potency of the sun is more manifest, Venus. It takes the sun and its apparent motion round the earth approximately 2 hours to pass through each of the 12 houses. And during each 2 hours, its influence passes from positive to negative. The first 15 degrees, or 1 hour, being the day half ruled by the sun, and the last 15 degrees, the night or negative half governed by the moon. The sacred hours of the sun are sunrise, noon, and sunset, the hours of meditation, prayer, and reflection, respectively. Each hour from sunrise to sunset is under the influence of a special diva, and over each event and every day, a lord or ruler presides. Over bathing and meditation is Saturn. Over affection and meals is Venus. Over social and moral duties is Jupiter. Over strength and business enterprise is Mars. Over speech and correspondence, Mercury. And over all physical and mundane things generally is the moon, while the sun is lord of all. We may consider the whole circle of the zodiac as one great cell, impregnated with the life-giving rays of the sun. Manifestation being the splitting up of this cell into myriads of smaller ones, each minute part or fragment containing the potent life of the sun. The earth upon which we live draws its energizing and life-giving properties from this zodiac, and in rotating upon its axis passes all those changes necessary to give the required opportunities for each human being to evolve the life spark that is inherent within him. From an earthly standpoint and a physical or material conception of things, the life permeating through each sign of the zodiac is the animal life, which must be redeemed by the triune spiritual essences coming from the sun, direct as will, wisdom, and activity. Man is made in the image of God, and in him eternally lives and moves and has his being, though plunged into matter and confined by the circle of necessity, the zodiac. For the time, he is dominated by the animal life, which he draws from the form side of existence, and only when ignorance has been overcome by experience and his birthright, his divine inheritance, is gradually realized, does he turn and begin to reverse his fears. This chapter, I hope, is giving light to many of the things that I've been saying, like what your divine birthright is and what it means to reverse your spheres, and the circle of necessity, and how people literally can't help themselves. They're just like animals driven by certain spirits. So I hope this is helpful. Thus and thus only does he rule his stars, i.e. the planetary influences, which govern the form side of his existence only. Then the Christ or Christos is born in him, and the solar rays vivify and awaken the sleeping self that has been so long buried in matter. Thenceforward, his task is to put the moon under his feet, to rise, that's an old symbol there, to rise from the thraldom of the lower self and be crowned by the sun. The whole story is that of the prodigal son, which is you, or daughter, prodigal daughter, who, after eating the husks of personal illusions, returns to his or her father, the individual or higher self, asking nothing but to be a servant. Yet for him is prepared the joyous feast. In the story of St. George and the dragon again is repeated the struggle between the higher and the lower self, the sun and the moon, the spirit and the soul. The soul bowing down to the animal and inclining to the pleasures of the senses until regenerated by the spirit and drawn from the selfishness and limitation of Saturn into the expansive and compassionate influence of Jupiter. Thus, on the form side, there is the moon between Saturn and Jupiter, just as on the life side is the sun between Mars and Venus. And between the sun and the moon is Mercury, the memory of human consciousness freed from the bondage to matter or form. It is not the sun, nor that which it represents, the life and spirit, which is colored by the sign through which the sun's rays pass, but the special center in the body or vehicle which that sign governs. For the root of the real self, the individual, while in manifestation, is in the sun itself, of whom it is said, "In him we live and move and have our being." It will now dawn upon the intuitive student that the majority of humanity are hugging the spokes of the great wheel, are identifying themselves with the various vehicles through which they, the real selves, are manifesting. These are the physical body and the senses, sensations, feelings, and desires, or the intellect and various mental attributes. In a word, that which constitutes the personality. the impermanent, changing, and fleeting illusory self governed in the main by the moon. This is why we must meditate so we can get to know who we are. We are not a physical body. And if you believe you are, then you also believe you're going to die. And that's a horrible way to live. The truth is you don't die. So now you can start living, because it's hard to live when you have fear of death, right? And when you're identified with form, you're in your moon. You're not in your sun. You got to overcome the moon by overcoming all identification with substance, with form, and return to the spirit, which is to return to the Father, which is to begin to once again adore authority, the authority that lives within you, which is the I am. And then you can come back into perfect order. Your life can be divinely ordered and it'll be taken care of for you. But if you want to do it all, if you want to believe that you're the one driving and you're doing it, then you go for that. But that's what suffering is, you know? So like you said, if you want to hug those spokes of the wheel around which you're a slave and you're continually turning, then you do that. You do you, boo. But I recommend you be reborn and let go and let God take care of your life. So the moon represents the impermanent personality, right? The false self. Okay, just the reflection. But the true self is represented by the sun. The individual character, as represented by the sun, will find its line of least resistance portrayed in the sign through which the sun was seen at birth. The individual character of you, as represented by the sun, will find its line of least resistance portrayed in the sign through which the sun was seen at birth, your sun sign. But if that ray with which the individual is thus identified as the separated self is followed in thought outside the influence of the zodiac to the sun, its pure white light will be found to be at the heart of all beings, to contain in essence all that which is differentiated through the many and various combinations found in our fellow men, or even in all animals, planets, and minerals. For the starting point of all manifested life commences with the sun, and its ray through any particular sign of the zodiac at birth permeates the whole of the nativity, its weakest point being in the sign which is opposite to that which its ray passed through at birth. So the weakest point being in the opposite sign. The life forces are renewed each year when the sun returns to the same degree as that which it held at birth. Your birthday. The life forces are renewed when the sun returns to the same degree as that which it was held at your birth. The mental activities quickened when the sun passes the same degree as that held by the moon at birth. And the physical conditions and environment affected when the sun returns each year to the degree occupied by the ascendant at birth. Something just came to mind that I need to share with you, because here he talks about it'll now dawn upon the intuitive student, that's you, that the majority of humanity are hugging the spokes of the great wheel, identifying themselves with the various vehicles through which they, the real selves, are manifesting. So if you identify with the physical body and the senses, the sensations and feelings and the desires, or the intellect and the various mental attributes, if you identify with either your body, your feelings, or your thoughts, your intellect, it's a trap. And this is why people who are so educated and smart are the ones who are in the most trouble, because they think that they are the one driving, you know? And somebody with a strong intellect is very, very hard to help, because they want to figure it all out themselves. They most often think they have it all figured out. And so they are in the deepest pit, because if you think you've already got it all figured out and you got it all going on, there's nowhere to go. You're already there in your mind. And so those are some of the people who are clinging the most to the spokes of the wheel, as he puts it. So this is why also the intellect needs to be overcome, because it's also a trap. Your ideas are not yours, you know? Ideas, feelings, emotions, these are all materials by which you can create your life, but they don't come from you. It's like the wind. The thoughts are like the wind. We don't know where the wind comes from. We don't know where it's going. Feelings are like water. Water passes from springs unseen and they flow back into the ocean. And where they go, we don't know. Where it goes, we don't know. So all the things that we feel and experience are just that. They're things to be felt and heard, but not to be identified with as though they come from you. Okay? Thoughts and feelings are like wind and sea. They're just elements in nature. You don't create thought, you don't create feeling. They just pass through the vehicle through which you're functioning, through which you, the real self, is currently functioning in, living in. Okay? We're meant to surrender all these things so we can be free, so we can achieve our birthright, our divine inheritance. So the life forces are renewed each year when the sun returns to the same degree, your birthday. And the sun, when it passes the degree of your moon, it quickens the mental activities and the physical conditions environment affected when the sun returns each year to the degree occupied by the ascendant at birth. The same is true in a minor degree of each day when the earth in her daily rotation brings these degrees in the nativity to the angles of the heavens. Interesting. When rising at birth, it, the sun, tends to increase the size of the body, giving strength to the muscles and full proportion of the stature in the bones, the appearance, the physical self. When rising, when on the east, which would mean somewhere near the ascendant. The face and forehead are large, hair and complexion, light in color. These last two depend somewhat upon the sign in which the sun is placed. Obviously, depends upon your race as well and your genetics, I guess. Light in color, these two last eyes, blue or hazel, sight good unless the sun is afflicted. The disposition is honorable, upright, serious, of good judgment, ambitious, desires of honor and public esteem, with a great sense of dignity. There is firmness, power of character, and strength of will, steadfastness, and decision of mind. Anybody have the sun rising at birth? Not me, but anybody here? I don't. The sun was setting at my birth. There's firmness, power of character, strength of will, steadfastness, and decision of mind. The native is fond of grandeur, pomp, and ceremony. And if the sun is badly aspected, these characteristics, with ostentation and too great a sense of his own importance, may have unnecessary prominence in the character, aka egotism. The rising position is also very favorable for health, strength, and longevity. The sun governs the heart chiefly, but also has relation to the back, the eyes, the arteries and muscles, and to the vital force all over the body. It energizes that bodily center, plexus or chakram, signified by the planet ruling the sign in which it is placed at birth. It also has to do with that circulation of the vital force, which starts from the brain and flows along the nerves to all the parts of the body. The function of this force is to coordinate and unify the otherwise separate energies and functions of the various parts of the body, and at the same time stimulate them. When the vital force is withdrawn at death, this power of coordination is lost and disintegration follows. When in the midheaven, when the sun is held high in the sky at birth, its influence is somewhat similar to that at sunrise, but there is still a greater sense of dignity and love of exercising authority and power. The native is fairly certain to be a person of note in his sphere of life, no matter how restricted that may be. And if the horoscope favors it, he may gain considerable prominence and fame. At his best, he will have sound judgment, strong common sense, and a practical character with a executive and organizing ability. When setting, which would be my chart, the feelings and emotions seem to be largely brought into play, and they may take various channels according to the sign: domestic, devotional, humanitarian, social, conjugal, philanthropic, patriotic. There is a going out towards others, and this varies according to the degree of development of the nature, high or low. In the lowly evolved soul, this may be little better than the outgoing desire for selfish pleasure in whatever form obtainable. In the average person, this position is good for friendship, companionship, partnership, marriage, popularity, social success, and pleasure, and for almost any form of cooperation between the native and others, whether in the family, in society, in public, in churches, associations, brotherhoods, municipal or public bodies, etc. If the sun is much afflicted, there may be exactly the same tendencies, but coupled with bad luck, trouble, and disappointment. When in the fourth house or at the bottom of the chart at the midnight point, the effect may vary a good deal according to sign and aspect. The first half of the life may be surrounded by troubles of various kinds arising out of family or health or circumstances. Sometimes the parents may prove uncongenial, or there may be death or separation. Sometimes the health is far from robust and the career in life suffers in consequence. And at other times, persistent bad luck may seem to follow the native. His plans are thwarted, his ambitions are failures, his hopes come to naught, and there may be an appearance of frustration and restriction. In some cases, this position is accompanied by psychic tendencies and experiences. Unless seriously afflicted, the middle and latter part of the life will be better than the earlier, and there may be gain, improvement, success in any of the matters just mentioned: family, health, position, circumstances. When well aspected, there is usually gain through matters signified by the fourth house, through property, houses, land, possessions, family circumstances, or estate, etc. Much of this general influence seems to prevail after the sun has passed the lower meridian and entered the third house, at which point it begins to rise. It's officially rising at that point. And if the horoscope is otherwise accordant, it may still be detected even when the sun has reached the cusp of the third house. The general orb of influence of the sun with regard to the four angles is apparently very much wider than is the case with the other heavenly bodies, and in some cases seems to extend to nearly the whole of the next, the cadent house. Thus, the sunrise influence may be considered to begin in the second house, to be greatest at the rising cusp, and to last well into the 12th house. Then the noon influence will begin to be in the 11th house and extend well into the 9th, while the sunset characteristics pass from the 8th to the 6th. The sun represents superiors and those in authority. Primarily in mundane astrology, it stands for the monarch, but in a relative sense, for anyone who exercises any degree of power or authority, no matter in what sphere of life. The occupations of the sun are usually those signified by the sign in which it is placed and its ruler. But when in Aries or Leo, they may be indicated by the planet with which it is in closest and strongest aspect. If in aspect with more than one, that which is strongest or most elevated. In its deepest sense, the sun represents the will to be, the primal life and consciousness at the heart of all creation. In the animal and the unevolved man, this manifests as desire, a rushing outward of the mind towards anything that will give pleasure. In the higher type of man, these outgoing energies are controlled by the intellect and then become will. In both types alike, they are the basis of action. That's the end of the chapter. Next is chapter 5, the moon. Mother. So I hope that was amazing. I hope you enjoyed this coverage of the sun today and what the sun represents in astrology. I hope it opened the window so you could see the vistas ahead in terms of the discovery that's ahead of us, the self-discovery, the spiritual discovery of our reality, but also of your true identity in this life. And that there's a much bigger picture at play than we can see. And for this reason, we should be as children. We should have faith in the heart and trust in the mind. And we should live that way because we live in a work of art. And it's not just a work of art, it's a masterpiece of all masterpieces, beyond comprehension. And if we can just start to perceive the beauty that lives within us and outside of us, then that will awaken the soul. The soul in you is what perceives beauty, is what can recognize beauty. And the more you surround yourself with beautiful thoughts, beautiful perceptions, beautiful ideas, beautiful feelings, the more you're tending to the garden of your own mind. And the more you're going to live in paradise because you've planted the seeds of paradise inside your own being. And the more you perceive beauty, the more you create beauty, the more you recognize beauty, the more your soul is awakening. Because your soul, just like your nose picks up on beautiful scents, your soul is smelling that sweetness of beauty, and it's awakening to the spirit that gives it life. So there is a difference between the soul and the spirit, right? And the soul is governed more by the moon, which is why we can be chained up with our emotions, because emotion is of the soul. It's soulish. And logic is of the spirit. So the two go together as the masculine and feminine halves within our own being. All men and women have masculine and feminine halves within them. And we got to unify that, the soul and spirit, by overcoming the lower nature. That's the only way. And then it's like you slay the dragon within and you get to ride on it, and it'll take you where you need to go. You know, just like your thoughts and feelings can become materials that can take you where you need to go, but you're no longer under the trap of identifying with them. You need to identify, I mean, do what you want, but I recommend you identify with the source of consciousness within you and not with any manifestation in the consciousness. So don't identify with what you observe. Identify with the one observing. Did you catch that? I hope you caught that, because that's the essence of it. That's the essence of it right there. Start doing it now, right now. Practice observing and identifying as the observer. It's a pure state. It's an untainted state of being. And this is being present. This is being in the flow. And just feel the breath exit your body. Feel it enter the body. Surrender to both the entering and the exiting of this life. All right. So I hope this was helpful, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope that you will take this meditative state with you throughout the rest of the day. Enjoy the rest of your weekend and take it with you all the way into next week as well. And first thing in the morning, tomorrow morning, I invite you to sit up in your bed before you even get out of bed and meditate, spine straight, and observe and practice identifying with yourself as the observer. And just observe the thoughts. Watch the thoughts come and go and let it pass. This is the key. Let it pass. Don't try to hold on to anything you observe. Just be aware and be the awareness. It's that simple. And you're coming back into eternity, your true eternal existence. No beginning, no end. So be blessed, guys. Be really blessed. Peace be with you. I love you. And I will see you next week. Be sure to invite some friends. Invite friends over next week, because the more the merrier. Thank you, guys. Thank you. And yeah, I'll see you next weekend. All right. Peace. Much love. Bye-bye.